morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates, guys. I hope you are not just joining us and you've been here from the beginning as we spoke a bit about special needs education. But if you are, it's always the opportunity to go back and listen to that conversation we just had with Ms. Amril Rubin. Now, guys, we have been seeing things heating up in the political arena here on the island of Tobago for a minute now. But yesterday was a bit more interesting than usual. We had a lot being said by the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, as well as the leader of the political party, the PDP, Watson Duke, who came out and really have been calling for fresh elections here on the island of Tobago. Now, for a lot of people, that is a major inconvenience, seeing that we just recently came out in 2021 from having 2 elections in 1 year, which would have really overwhelmed a number of persons within the population. Now, this comes from the fact that the members of this current administration who had previously gotten into office under the banner of the PDP had shifted gears during their time in office, which was late on the last quarter of 2022, by removing themselves from the political party that was used as the political vehicle to get into office, the PDP, and then claiming themselves to be independent. But recently, we've seen those same members of this current administration doing what it takes and preparing for the formation of a new party, therefore creating a new vehicle to drive into the next election. But this has triggered a lot of conversations on all sides of the political spectrum, on the international level, on the local level, and even on the regional level. Questions as to the legality or even the morality of the entire move, with Mr. Watson Duke even calling Farley a political fraud for hijacking the THA. And this morning, we're going to have that conversation and much more. But to have that conversation this morning with me, I have a very familiar face to my studio, Mr. Max James. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank God for being alive.
All right. I mean, it's always a pleasure to sit and have these conversations with you. This morning, unfortunately, we are pressed for time, but we're going to try as much as we can to get into this conversation now.
Yes, indeed.
I didn't really get a chance to look at too much of the conversation that Mr. Duke did on live on Facebook yesterday, but from the little snippets that I saw of it, he called Farley a fraud, and he claimed that this current administration had hijacked the THA by transitioning into a new party as opposed to staying as what they had claimed last year to be independent.
Well, in the first place, in your preamble, and good morning to the viewers, and I want to speak specifically to the Tobago diaspora in Trinidad. I think that is where the fight will eventually be, and to the people of Tobago, and especially to the PNM people here in Tobago. We have to know where, they have to understand what their leader stands for. No, there's a little correction in your preamble when you said they separated themselves from the PDP. Mr. Farley and his team did not separate themselves from the PDP. They were expelled from the party. Mr. Duke said, leave. And I wish I would never have to, in any significant way, speak about Watson Duke. He's the one that fractured the PDP. And he did all sorts of nefarious things. And we see all his misbehavior or behavior on Facebook and social media. And we know what he stands for. So he's basically an entity. He has no one besides himself of any serious ilk beside himself in the party. In fact, he's not of any ilk based on his misbehavior in public office. So he should be called upon to tender his resignation in the first place. He should go back to his constituents in Roxborough. And his very robust supporters in Roxborough have defected from him because of his misbehavior. And we know what that behavior was. Everybody knows how he has operated. In respect of the Prime Minister, he should call fresh elections in Trinidad. And he has a prime opportunity, now that the PDP, now that the new party has not been fully formed. He should seize the opportunity. Call a snap election, Mr. Rowley. I challenge you. and let us see what you've made up, and let us see what the results would be. I dare him to do that. But he has a golden opportunity to keep the two Tobago seats because he believes Tobago is in disarray under Farley and company. Mr. Rowley, if you look at his record, he's increased gas prices about 3 or 4 times. Nobody likes him for that. Crime is running rampant in Trinidad, and he seems very much unable to deal with it. Call elections for that. He changed the law to win an election. He lost. He lost at the 6-6 because he didn't win. He lost eventually. 14-1, he lost. And every time he gets involved, Rowley doesn't understand that it's a losing game and a losing streak. So he should call elections because he has lost the elections. Ostensibly, he has lost. And therefore, he has no moral authority to tell Farley that is an abuse of democracy. He has abused his office as prime minister. He has failed in terms of the economy on every count. What is his record regarding the people of Tobago? And he talks about democracy. Tell me, from since Williams, his former boss, who said Tobagans must eat grass. We won't forget that. Rowley is on record of calling our Deepwater Harbor proposals, or the present Deepwater Harbor Duck Pond. And he's so mischievous that he's getting a state agency to give proposals for extension of the finger pier. That is the solution for Tobago's economy.
All right, and so when we talk, let's talk a little bit about that release that the Prime Minister made yesterday, as he called on the Chief Secretary to call fresh elections in Tobago. One of his biggest arguments was the mandate, the change of the mandate. A new mandate is needed. Talk to us about why you think that this administration can or should press forward with the mandate that they utilized under the previous PDP banner.
Has Mr. Farley changed into somebody else? Are the other representatives over there, have they changed to somebody else that we don't know? They're the same people with even a better mandate, with even an improved mandate, now that the mischief maker is out of the way.
But is the new mandate clear?
The new mandate is clear. If you listen to the enunciations of the Chief Secretary and his cabinet here, it's the same mandate, an improved mandate. So there's no need to call elections. The players are still the same. In fact, new elections will cause more havoc in the society. And so Mr. Rowley has not established any serious moral ground, or for that matter, any legal ground, to say call an elections. He knows he can't call it. So he's just a plain mischief maker. Until Dennis has failed us, he lost his seat. You have a leader who is out of the assembly, and a leader in the assembly who has ceded his authority and responsibility to somebody out of the assembly. How does that work so good and effective democracy and representation?
Right, and let's shift gears a little bit and talk about his call to the Secretary for Infrastructure, Transportation, and Infrastructure, Mr. Trevor James, to basically know his place with the press release that he made last week, as he said that he demanded that the licensing officers from Trinidad be removed from Tobago with immediate
Mr. James
effect.
is quite in order. If Mr. Rowley doesn't know, and if the PNM people don't know, let me read the law that gives Mr. James full authority to do what he has proposed, what he has done, and what he's proposing to do, and all the other secretaries, what they're proposing to do. So let's listen to the law. There was a confusion many years ago, 1986 thereabout, since the formation of the Assembly, actually, 1980, where we didn't understand the role of the Assembly and the public service in Tobago. So the Constitution was amended by Act 8 of 88, and here what it reads. Let me go down to the exact clause. The Constitution, let me quote, the Constitution is amended in subsection 3.1, deleting the definition of public service and substituting the following new definition. So you're going to see who has authority in Tobago. This is the Constitution that's been amended. Public service means subject to the provisions of subsection 4 and 5 as of the Constitution, the service of the government of Trinidad and Tobago or of the Tobago House of Assembly established by Section 3 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act in a civil capacity. So you're seeing Tobago here, by the Constitution, amended to have its public service. And if we have our public service, the law goes on to further to say in the 5th schedule, item 21, for example, customs and excise, and 22, licensing. So licensing is under the authority and control of the Tobago House of Assembly. So I want the people in Trinidad to hear that. I want everybody, PNM and otherwise, to hear that the law says licensing under Section 22, an item for which the Assembly is responsible. Now what that means, whoever is the secretary, emanating from discussions from the cabinet here in Tobago, our cabinet here in Tobago, will make such, the law says that where a secretary has been appointed to a particular event, he shall have general direction and control over that division. So therefore, if license falls under Secretary James, then he has the control, not so? So that the policy regarding licensing operations in Tobago must emanate from the Assembly. It is clear. So I don't understand what the Prime Minister, he's confused. Nothing he has ever done in his career, and he boasts about 40-something years, going to 50 years in Parliament, he has ever done for Tobago. Everything that man has done has been against the development of Tobago. So let Mr. James do his work. The law gives him the power under Section 22, licensing, and Act 8 of 88 says, changing the definition of public service in the service of the government of Trinidad and Tobago or of the Tobago House of Assembly. Let the people do their work and set their policy. If the minister wants to send, or the transport commissioner wants to send license officers here, there is an authority here that he must confer with.
Correct. I mean, even the youngest child
can see that.
Could say that even if it were an item that was not under the 5th schedule, that there should be some level of communication with the THA just to at least alert them of what is happening, and just the respect and the understanding of that authority. Now, the Prime Minister also calls for a better understanding of both the National Constitution and the THA Act on the behalf of this current administration, as he said that the lack of understanding would just continue to lead to the government and the central government and the THA having to continuously go back and forth in the court to get interpretations, which is basically just a waste of public servants.
But nobody has gone there since.
But he's saying that this is what it would lead to if the continuous conflict in understanding of the role of the THA and the central government.
Well, we would welcome that. You know, Lawrence Marash tried that. It's not today. It's not a new story, as we say in Tobago, that they've been trying. Their intention is to whittle away every power that the Tobago House Assembly has. You remember in the last piece of legislation they proposed, the last Tobago bill, they proposed taking land from Tobago for the purpose of the central government. They proposed changing the definition of borders of Tobago. So this PNM is not on record. They are mischief makers, they are power seekers, and they want to dismantle the assembly if they could have.
Right.
When Mr. Rowley dies, I will send him a picture of Tobago on his coffin and a picture of his sheep farm in Tobago. One that he would, if he could, grieve, and the other one to remind him of his only contribution to Tobago, a sheep farm. That is what his position is.
Right, and let's look a little bit at the political leader of the PDP, Watson Duke, once more, as he also has, well, he actually, I believe his live video that he made came before the Prime Minister's release, but he also called on the Prime Minister to intervene, which is kind of a change in tone from his regular conversations where he usually says that, Mr. Rowley and the central government should kind of mind their business where
They
the
know.
affairs of Tobago is concerned. But are you not worried that the consistent bickering and back and forth between the central government and the THA is having a negative impact on the relationship between the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I know you always ask about that. And I'm saying, for me, as I always say it, and for me, I am hoping every Tobagoan should be of this mind. I'm a secessionist. It has not worked. We tried to make it work. We tried to come up with in political architecture or infrastructure, whichever way, to make the relationship work. It hasn't worked. My brother Anthony would always say, those are my words, so I give him the credit. The next Trinidadian to seek to control Tobago has just been conceived. If we don't look sharp and we don't do what we have to say, the next Trinidadian has just been conceived, and we need to dismantle the present arrangement. We need to dismantle the Dispute Resolution Commission and seek a new arrangement. As a matter of fact, you see all these matters here under the fifth schedule. I'll tell you a little story. When I was a secretary and assemblyman under the NER, for those young people who are listening, National Alliance for Reconstruction, under Robinson and Ho Choi Charles, I became a secretary. The law says I was responsible for cooperatives. I sent my director to Trinidad, got a stamp, legalized everything, to establish a new department authorizing for ourselves here in Tobago. The law gave me the power. So similarly, all these provisions here under the fifth schedule, I plead with Mr. Farley, get up and move and establish divisions and institutions on every sector and every item under the fifth schedule. That way you create employment, you make the assembly more effective and efficient in the provision of services to Tobago. We can't continue to allow those institutions to perform things for us in Tobago.
Right. But until we are able to get that secession that you talk about, right? The truth is the consistent bickering and back and forth, it does create an upheaval within the societal relationship.
So the simple answer to that.
We on the island here, we do depend heavily on domestic tourism from Trinidad, specifically around times like now where we just saw the Tobago Jazz Festival happening. Now, I don't have the statistics or the numbers to say, okay, 50% of the tourists that arrived on the island were domestic tourists. But I'm just saying all of this to say, how do we move forward to better the relationship as it is so that it doesn't negatively impact that social relationship?
So you have refined the search, refined the question, and I think that Trinidadians need to let go of Tobago and leave us to develop our democracy. Tobago is sovereign to Tobagonians. I'm going to repeat it. Tobago is sovereign to Tobagonians, and we should be allowed to run. We don't tell Trinidadians what to do, but we are not in confusion with the regular Trinidadian. We are in conflict with the 1%ers who want to extend their arms to Tobago and take all that they could get. We are in contention with the PNM headhunters. We are in contention with the PNM hierarchy, with the PNM at the level of Mr. Rowley and his party. They are who? But the regular Trinidadian doesn't really care per se. You see the point? So we are not in confusion or conflict with the regular Trinidad, and we welcome here.
Right. But as your relationship stands,
we have to fix. Let me just finish. We have to fix that. And Rowley et al. Must know that at this stage of the development of our democracy and our politics in Trinidad and Tobago, that it's time for them to clear the way and leave us to manage ourselves, create the political and socio-political infrastructure and the socio-economic infrastructure. When that happens for us in Tobago, the entire country will develop and there will be peace, but they need to let go.
Mr. James, as the relationship stands now, as the political setup and environment is in Trinidad and Tobago currently as we speak today, what can or should be done by both the THA and the central government to improve the relationship as it is today, to enable us to function more effectively?
Let me give you a different answer.
Especially where the financial disbursements are concerned and the clear lines where areas of supervision is concerned.
The law asks Mr. Rowley to follow the law and to recognize the law. He sworn to uphold the Constitution and the law. The law says that we have a public service in Tobago, and we will prosecute that to the end. The law says licensing is a matter under the Fifth Schedule. So the Prime Minister in the first place needs to follow the law. Every Tobagonian who is seeing me now, Tobagonians, this is the law. The law says that licensing is a matter under the Fifth Schedule. The Fifth Schedule comprises areas of full authority for which your assembly has been created. The Prime Minister must follow the law. Since he is threatening us, I'm asking him, call the elections in Trinidad. See about Trinidad, because Trinidad is what the law says you are. You will claim to be Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And if you are, then follow the law. And the fact of the matter is that I know he ain't calling no elections in Trinidad. Let's start there first. Let's start in Trinidad first. Solve the crime. Solve the economic problems. You look at him at the recently concluded security conference. Nobody takes Mr. Rowley seriously. You listen how the Prime Minister of Barbados cuts him up and mashes him up. Nobody takes Rowley seriously. He's not a serious leader in the Caribbean. And he somehow doesn't recognize that. Nobody respects him. Maybe just because he's Prime Minister is courtesy. But nobody takes Rowley very seriously.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. James. Well, as I said before, the time for this conversation that we have this morning is quite limited. And hopefully as this situation unfolds and we get to see how it moves along, we continue to have this conversation. Guys, we're going to have a quick break and we'll be back right after this.